Okay, so first part.
Don't get mad, it's me.
So this says ABCD is congruent to GFHE. You don't even need the pictures. You can just look at the congruent statement. BC is congruent to what? If you look at here, BC is the middle two, so it's congruent to the middle two, FH. Or you can look and see, it'd be there. Oh, this one was messed up. Is it switched on yours?
Yeah. It's messed up.
It's messed up on yours too?
No. It's messed up on mine.
I mean, like,
No, yours is fine.
oh.
Yeah, mine was messed up. It's E, G, F,
Oh,
H. There.
I was reading the top.
Yours is correct.
I was reading the top stuff.
Okay, so angle B is congruent to angle F. And side CD would be congruent to HE. Okay, solving proportions. This is an easy one. You just cross multiply and divide. 3 times 24 divided by 4 is 18. This one, you're going to have to write the equation out. So remember, in a proportion, something is a proportion if the cross products are equal. 4 times x has to equal 3 times 24. That's why you cross multiply and then divide by 4. So you got to do that equation too. 7 times x, 7x has to equal 6 times that. So remember, you got to take the 6 times both of those. 6x plus 12. Then all we got to do is subtract. 7x minus 6x is x equals 12. Okay, similar means they've been shrunk down or made bigger. The scale factor is just how much smaller or bigger have they made. Now, it doesn't tell you what order to do it in, but all it is, the scale factor, it's a side over a side, or a corresponding side over a corresponding side. So, you could use this, but since that's a decimal, I wouldn't use it because you'd have to switch it. So it'd be 8 over 16. That's it. If you did that 3.5 over 7, you can't have a decimal in a fraction, so you'd have to move the decimal, and write it as 35/70. You don't need to reduce, but you can. Both of them reduce to 1/2. So when you have similar figures, you can find missing sides by doing proportions. Now this one, I think, was a little bit messed up too. X corresponds to 2x. So since I put this one on top, I'd have to put this one on top. 2.25 equals or over 4.5. So yeah, this one was a messed up problem. Because when we solve it now, this times this is 4.5x equals this times this, which is also 4.5x. This was supposed to be a, if I change it, this is supposed to be a 2 right there. So it would have been 2 to 2x equals 2.25 to 4.5. So then you get 4.5x equals 9. So when you divide by 4.5, you get x equals 2. So that was a misprint there. That should have been a 2. Now,
Mr. Henderson?
yeah.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Okay.
The 10th graders, you guys will be juniors next year, and you have the option to take a PSAT test in the fall. It's October 10th. It's called a preliminary test. It's a test that's like the ACT. But it kind of gives your feet wet to see what it's like. It's a time thing, different areas, and then you get it back what your weakness and strengths are, so you can study from that. So it helps you get a better score on your ACT when you take it in the spring. If you'd like to take the PSAT, I have to put an order in now test order. You can pay for it then, if the school does not pay for it, it's $16 to take the test. So if you'd like to take the test, I need you to sign a sheet, so I know how many you ordered. I'm making you make a decision in a hurry here.
How are you gonna give it to us first?
ACT test you need for four-year college. If you go just tech school or working, you don't need everyone to take it. If you're planning on just working after high school, it's not gonna help. Sorry, how about you guys keep listening to Tanner said, we'll pass the sheet around there and then we'll do your rows.
Okay, similar figures now. Corresponding angles are congruent. Now, if you look at these marks, mean that the lines are parallel, and alternate interior angles are congruent, which means whatever that angle is, x will be the same. So in a triangle, they add up to 180. And since this adds up to 110, this would have to be a 70 degree. You just take 180 minus 40 minus 70, which means x is also 70 degrees. More proportion stuff. You can set these up a number of ways. I always start with the x. X, and you got a choice. You can go to that or to that. If I go x to 24, you got to follow the same pattern and go 7 to 12. Then you just solve the proportion. Cross multiply and divide. And you get 14. So the picture's not very accurate, but that's all right. This one is a little trickier one. If I go F to 21, F is the bottom of the small triangle, so I got to take the side of the small triangle. 21 is the bottom of the big triangle, so I got to put the side of the big triangle, which is the whole thing. The common mistake here is people just put 15 there. It's the bottom to the bottom equals the side to the side. So 6 times 21 divided by 21 is 6. Classifying triangles as right, acute, or obtuse. If it's a right, a squared plus b squared is going to equal c squared. If it's acute, a squared plus b squared is greater than c squared. It's kind of backwards than what you would think. And obtuse, a squared plus b squared is less than c squared. So remember, c is always the longest side, so that would be c. So if you figure this out, 8 squared plus 6 squared, how does it compare to 10 squared? They're equal. So since they're equal, that's a right triangle. 6, 8, 10, common right triangle. Here, that's the longest, so it'd be 8 squared plus 9 squared. How does it compare to 15 squared? This is 145, this is 225. It's less than, which means it's obtuse. Now, solving right triangles. You can use SOHCAHTOA. Remember, SOH means sine is equal to the opposite over hypotenuse. CAH says cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now, this one, to find y, I would have to use tangent because I know the opposite and y is adjacent. But this is a 30 degree, so this is a special triangle. So if you remember the rules, it's a lot easier. If the short leg is 4, how long is the long leg? 8. The hypotenuse is double the short leg. And then the long leg is 4 square root of 3. So if you don't remember that, then you got to use these. The next one, you do have to use these. Now, I don't think it asked for the angle, but if it did, remember these two add up to 90. So you would just subtract that off of 90 would be 24 degrees. But they don't ask for it here, so they probably won't on the test. Then you got to decide, do I want to find x or y? Which one? X. Okay? X is opposite of 66. 10 is adjacent to 66. Opposite and adjacent is tangent. So, tangent of my angle, 66, equals opposite over adjacent. So once you write it down, then you just have to solve it. You get the x by itself, so I take it times 10. Now, you got to remember to have your calculator on degrees. And there's not a lot of calculators, so if you have one, bring your own. So round these to the nearest tenth. It would be 22.46, which would round to 22.5. Now once you know two sides, you could use another trig function to find y, but the easiest is the Pythagorean theorem. To find the hypotenuse, remember it's the leg squared plus the other leg squared, square rooted. $24.6. So one thing you should check is your hypotenuse should always be the longest side, which it is. So here we have the one solving the right triangle. Remember, when you solve it, you got to find three things, the three missing things. Here, there's a side missing and the two angles. So, again, if you know two sides, use the Pythagorean theorem. If it's a leg you're looking for, remember, it's the hypotenuse squared minus the leg squared. You subtract them when you're looking for a leg, you add them when you're looking for the hypotenuse. So this turns out to be 4. It's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. Now, to find an angle, if I'm looking for that one, you can use any one of the sides, but I'll use 3 since it was given in 5. 3 is adjacent, 5 is the hypotenuse, so that is cosine. Cosine of x equals adjacent over hypotenuse. When we did it here, this was missing. Here it's the angle that's missing. So to get x by itself, you move that over, and remember it turns to that inverse, the -1 of 3/5. So that is above the cosine key. So you got to hit the second function and then that. And you get 53.1 for that angle. And the other angle, they always got to add up to 90. So just subtract that off of 90. 36.9. So there's the 3 missing things. This one, we're missing the hypotenuse. So you do add them. Remember, it's leg squared plus leg squared. 9 squared plus 12 squared, square rooted is 15. So there's one thing. Then you got to find one of the angles. It doesn't matter. I'll find this one. Again, you can use any of the sides, but 9 was given, and that's opposite. 12 was given, and that's adjacent. So that's the tangent. Tangent of this angle here, I just called it 1. equals opposite over adjacent. I should call it a letter. We'll call it y. So then you got to get the y by itself. So you move it over and it changes to inverse. So again, you got to do tangent inverse, the key above the tangent, of 9/12. And that's 36.86, which would round to 36.9 degrees. Then the other angle, they got to always add up to 90, so subtract that off of 90. 53.1. They're the same triangle. 3, 4, 5, 9, 12, 15. They're just similar triangles. All right, if you've got two tangents, like it says, you remember how the lengths compare to each other? This length and this length, if you had to guess. They're equal. So to figure out what x is, 2x plus 7 has to equal 5x minus 8. So then you just solve it. Get the x's together. Since it's a plus 2x, you minus 2x to get rid of it. Giving you 3x on that side. Get the non-x's to the other side. It's a minus 8, so you'd add 8. And then we just have to divide by 3. 5 is x. X is 5. Now, all of these are central angles. This is like on the chapter 10 test. Remember, the arc and the central angle are all the same. So, if this is 55, so is this, because they're vertical. This is a half a circle, which is 180, which means this would have to be 125. I think this is the exact problem from the test. And this is a half a circle, or this one. So 90 and 55 is 145. So this would have to be 35. So arc BAD, start at B, go through A, and end at D. It's 55, 125, and 55. You're right, 235. Arc DCB, go from D to C to B. That's kind of an error. Because since it's a minor arc, they should have just called it arc DB. But you still know which one it is. 125. All right. Inscribed angles and their arcs are the same. I mean central angles. Inscribed angles and their arcs are not the same. If this is 20, remember what the arc is? It's double. So here they want the measure, that's what the M means. Measure of arc BC, we just figured out is 40. The measure of arc AB. Well, here it tells us this is 150, and that's 40, so that makes 190. So you just, the circle minus 190. 170, yeah. Then these two are for this one. I should have put a line there. If you're finding an angle outside, you take the arc plus the arc and divide by 2. So to find angle 1, or not plus, if it's inside you add, if it's outside you subtract. So it's 80 minus 25 divided by 2. The arc minus the arc divided by 2. And you get 27.5. So that's that. Then we want the measure of DE. Well, if you notice, this chord and this chord are the same, which means this arc and this arc is the same. A whole circle is 360. You take off the 80 and the 25. Leaves you with 255 degrees. Since they're the same, you just divide it by 2. So that would be 127.5 degrees. Standard equation of a circle. I better put that up so I don't forget. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So h and k are the center. That's h and that's k. So all you do is substitute them in. So x, take away a -4, a minus and a minus makes plus, squared, plus y, take away 7, squared, equals the radius squared. So, nothing real tough, you're just putting the numbers in. All right, to find the value of x, first you got to figure out how many degrees are in this. So it's the number of sides minus 2 times 180. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 minus 2 is 5. Times 180. 900. So then you just subtract all of these off of 900. And what's left is 132 degrees. So here we got to do the same thing. We got to figure out what this angle is and then subtract it off of 180 to find that angle. So this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So 5 minus 2 is 3 times 180 is 540. So subtract those off. So that makes this 140 degrees. So the angle right next to it would have to be 40 degrees. Because together they make a straight line. They got to add up to 180. All right, you can use your formula sheets for these, but remember, area of a square is just length times width. So this is just like the last test. In a square, all the corners are 90, which makes this a 45, 45. So if the hypotenuse is 8, the leg is half of that times the square root of 2, which means the entire side is 8 square roots of 2. So the area is the length times the width. $128. This one, you do have to use the formula for a regular polygon. Apothem times perimeter divided by 2. Apothem isn't drawn in there. Apothem goes from the center to an edge. And on a hexagon, every angle's 120, which means that's 60. So on a 30, 60, 90, the hypotenuse is 10, the short leg is half of that, and the long leg is the short leg times the square root of 3. So area is the apothem, 5 square roots of 3, times the perimeter. If that's 5, the whole side is 10. Remember, the radius and the sides will always be the same in a hexagon. So that's 60. And then don't forget, divide by 2. $259.8. Okay, another one from the last test. Similar, so find the ratio of large to small of the perimeters and areas. The ratio of perimeters is the same exact thing as the scale factor. So the ratio of the perimeters is 12 to 8. Just a side to a side. You don't need to reduce, but you can. I could divide them both by 4, get 3 to 2. Then the ratio of the areas, area is squared, so all you do is you square your numbers. Square the 12, square the 8. If you reduced it, that would have been 9/4. And then the last one. Find the length of AB. That's just how long that is. So you'd first have to find the entire distance around, which is circumference. Circumference is pi times diameter. So 3.14 times the radius is 7, so the diameter is 14. But I don't want all the way around, I just want 80 degrees out of the 360. So you just take the circumference times 80 3/60ths. And you get 9.8.